got courage to lead. Courage to lead. Be brave and be bold. Oh, 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 oh. Let it roar.
Welcome to the Courage to Leap and Lead podcast, where each of our guests share the stories of courage that helped them become powerful leaders. Before we start today's show, please remember to visit courageconsulting.com, where you can find all of the episodes and lots of other excellent resources. That's courageconsulting.com. Now, here's your host, Leadership Courage Coach, C.B. Bowman.
Hi, everybody. This is part 2 of my interview with Stephen M.Covey. And he made a comment in part 1 when we're talking about how do we increase our self-trust. And he said, assume and tell people about positive intent. Now, I want to drill down on this because we hear this a lot, positive intent, positive intent. How can you declare positive intent if you don't trust yourself? It's kind of like which is coming first, the chicken or the hen?
Yeah, great question. I think trusting yourself does come first, because in a sense, assuming positive intent is a form of extending trust to another. And if you don't trust yourself, it's harder to extend that trust to another. And when you assume positive intent, that's goodwill. That's basically saying that we might have differences, we might see the world differently, we might come at it differently, but I'm assuming positive intent in you as a human being.
But Stephen, in yourself, how can you get to positive intent? How do you know that what you're thinking and what you're feeling is that positive intent? Because you're going to say to yourself, no, I felt positive about this all along. But now you're saying because I'm not trusting myself and that's shown through positive intent that I'm not trusting others. So you get yourself caught in this quagmire of, I don't know if my intent would be considered trustworthy by others.
Yes. Okay. Again, you're really drilling deep in insightful. So the more that when you look at intent, that's your motive. And it's also your agenda. And the motive that best builds trust is genuine caring. When you care about the people that you're serving, that you're leading, that you're interacting with, that you're selling to, even as a salesperson, but if I'm a leader of a team, do I care about the members of my team? And do they know and feel it? Because it's felt. We know the expression, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And so the caring is the motive. And so you do ask yourself, you need to ask yourself, do I care about them, about their interests, about their needs, about their concerns? Because if your motive is based upon caring, and then you'll be able to build trust better with someone because they feel that. I love, let me see if I can get this right. It was Dr. Maya Angelou who said, I have learned that people will forget what you said, they will forget what you did, but they will never forget how you made them feel.
Yes, it's one of my favorite quotes.
It's a beautiful quote. It's powerful. It's a principle.
Yeah.
And they feel caring. So it's not you saying, I care about you. It's, do they feel you care about them? You want to build trust with someone? Demonstrate care, concern for the person, as
You
a
have to care
person.
about yourself first.
Your
Right?
self-care. Everything I'm saying about with another always starts with yourself. So you examine your own motive. Am I seeking to bless, not just to impress? Am I putting service above self-interest?
Mhm.
And, if your mindset is one of serving and of giving back and of contributing first, it's not that I don't have other desires. Of course, I have self-interest and I want to succeed and do these things, but what's my mindset? And the more you can kind of orient yourself around service, contribution, caring, and in a relationship, seeking mutual benefit. That's called win-win.
Mhm.
My father wrote about that in 7 Habits of, yes, I want to win, of course. I want your win too. In fact, I want your win as much as I do my own. Seeking win-win, mutual benefit. When people feel that, they tend to trust me. And I tend to trust myself more when I'm also operating on that premise, because that's the only sustainable approach when we're interdependent, is mutual benefit, win-win. So in this Trust and Inspire book, here's how I phrase it. Put service above self-interest. And here's the irony. In the process, self-interest gets served. We all tend to win. And my mantra for this, I learned again from my father. And I do this every time I give a presentation. I do this before a podcast. I did this before we started today. I had my own thoughts on this, where I say these words. It's kind of a mantra for me, and I try to mean it, not just say it. Seek to bless, not to impress. Because to me, it speaks of what's my mindset going into this podcast? Am I trying to impress people that I'm smart or that I know, trust, and this and that? If that's my mindset, then it'll be more about me and looking good and the like. But my motive is more self-serving. If instead I seek to bless, if that's my motive, is I want to contribute. I'm hoping to maybe say something that could be of value, helpful to someone. I'm not trying to look good. I'm trying to serve.
And you have, gosh, such richness out of this conversation. Thank you.
Yeah, seek to bless, not to impress. So for every speech, any podcast, I say that, and I try to mean it so that it gets my head right. That life is about contribution, not accumulation. And I'm trying to give back, and I'm trying to help and to serve. Service above self-interest. But again, the great irony is self-interest tends to get served when you first serve another. That's exciting. And I think courage is the same way. I think there's kind of self-serving courage, which is a good thing. You stand up for yourself.
Yes.
We need to stand up for ourselves and what we stand for. So self-serving courage, but service-oriented courage is even stronger. That's standing up for others and standing up for principles. That's doing the right thing. That's even a higher level of courage.
I totally agree. Totally. Okay, number 3.
Okay.
Third.
So I said first, focus on your trust in yourself. Second, declare your intent and assume positive intent. Third, lead out in extending trust to others. In other words, you be the one to lead out. Yes, there's a risk. I know there's a risk in trusting people. You know there's a risk in trusting people. Our listeners, our viewers know there's a risk in trusting people. But you know what? There's also a risk in not trusting people.
I like that.
And I think in today's world, a collaborative world, an interdependent world, a world built on relationships and partnerships and collaboration, I think that not trusting might be the greater risk. Now, I'm not asking you to just blindly trust everyone and anyone. I call that a blind trust. That's not going to work. And that's not smart, because not everyone can be trusted. And there are some people that are untrustworthy and are bad actors. But the majority of people can be trusted, want to be trusted. So don't let the few that you can't trust define for you the many who you can. Instead, start fresh with the idea that I start with trust and I lead out in extending that trust until people prove otherwise that I shouldn't. But it's a better starting point because it tends to change the very nature of the relationship when you take the risk of saying, I choose to trust you. And then it's disarming to people. And they tend to be inspired by it. They tend to want to live up to it.
It's true.
And they tend to reciprocate and return the trust back. And maybe not everyone. And I acknowledge that maybe someone tries to take advantage. But I think it's better to live your life trusting and occasionally be, let down than to be forever distrusting and be right from time to time.
And part of that is trusting that you will know how to respond if you are let down.
It is. That's a part of it, that you acknowledge there's some risk and sometimes we're wrong in the trust. And we learn and we try to get more right, but we try to learn in a way that that still operates on the premise of being trusting, because it brings that, what trusting does to others is it brings out the best in them. They tend to rise to the occasion and perform better. They tend to grow and develop. You give them opportunities and they kind of live up to it. And they develop new capabilities. They have growth and they tend to give the trust back. They reciprocate. It's a reciprocity. But I even believe that by you going first, your motive is not reciprocity. Your motive is generosity. It's abundance.
So the question I want to ask you, and you talk about in chapter 4, the fundamental beliefs of a trust and inspired leader.
Yes.
But one of the things that's come to my attention, and I can't remember what it was, but it was recent, whereby there was a leader who felt that, was listening to all of the new research about leadership and being inspiring and being motivator and being trustworthy and everything. And so the behavior that this person started to display was asking people's opinions and listening to it and so on and so forth. And then what happened is that the company started to distrust him for not being able to make decisions. It was flipped, that instead of caring enough to hear opinions and not giving your opinion first, which would taint the waters, and instead people started to look at him as, well, he's lost his ability to lead because he's asking. What say you about that?
I get it. I think I would respond this way, that it's a balancing act. We're trying to find the sweet spot. Any strength pushed to the extreme becomes a weakness. And so if a strength of mine is to listen and seek out opinion and the like, that's a strength. But pushed to the extreme, it becomes a weakness. And in that case, it becomes like this person's he listens to everyone, but he can't make a decision. And then he becomes wishy-washy. He's a great listener, but we need leadership. I want someone to make a decision and move forward. We need some vision too. And so, but I could go the other direction of, let's take a great visionary. That's a gift. That's a strength. Push to the extreme, it could be a weakness, which is we have this visionary that never involves anyone, never listens to anyone, doesn't understand what's really going on. And it's all in his head or her head, the vision. So that strength pushed to the extreme becomes a weakness. The person that's talks straight and tells the truth. Well, that's a strength to be a straight talker, but pushed to the extreme, you're going to be offending people left and right, all in the name of talking straight, and you're just offensive. Yes. Even something like respect. You think, can you have too much respect? Well, maybe pushed to the extreme, respect might look like this. At the extreme is I'm so respectful and not wanting to offend someone that I don't tell them the truth or what they need to hear. You want your doctor to tell you the truth, not what you want to hear. And so you can even go too far in respect if you're not willing to share what would be valuable to know because you're worried about them taking offense somehow. So you find that sweet spot, the balancing act, and it's really good judgment. And that's why I like to say humility and courage, because I could go too far with humility and then I never take action. I'm not leading. I'm just so humble. I just listening to everyone else because I'm so humble. I could go too far in courage, where I'm so courageous and strong that I'm just kind of running people over in the sense of not being humble, not taking the time to listen because I'm so sure about myself and my courage. I've seen courageous people lack humility and come across not, as an authentic, as a vulnerable leader, an authentic, someone that they would follow. But I've also seen some humble people maybe turn into like this leader that listened so much, didn't make a decision and wasn't seen as decisive. So find that sweet spot. I think for all of us, it's an ongoing process. Same with trust. You can trust too much, get burned, not trust enough, and not open up the possibilities. So you're even in trusting, you're also trying to find that sweet spot. But I'm making the point that I think most of us need to become more trusting than we have been.
Stephen, what do you consider to be your greatest strength?
I think that maybe my greatest strength is that I genuinely care about people and about principles. And so I'm trying to teach principles that I believe endure, as opposed to fads, as opposed to just practices, but instead principles like trust, like inspiration, like caring, like empathy, that will endure, that work in different contexts, different cultures, different parts of the world, that will work today and will work tomorrow, and that worked 100 years ago. Principles. And I believe in them. And I tried to write my books, Trust and Inspire, this new one, Speed of Trust, on the basis of principles that are enduring, as opposed to just timely fads or practices that come in and out. And so I think I care about principles. And one of the principles is that we influence people. Enduring influence is created from the inside out. So we look in the mirror, we start with ourselves, as opposed to looking out the window at everybody else, inside out. And then the second thing, so I care about principles. I care about people, and I care about their growth, their development. I care about their wins, their successes, and I care about their interests, their families, their communities. And so I'm seeking that mutual benefit. I'm trying my best. I'm trying to bless, not to impress. I'm trying to get into their world, not just mine. And I think if I stay true to that I can be effective at that. And I think I have been, but I don't take it for granted and I don't assume it. That's why I always come back to seek to bless, not to impress, to remind myself of what I believe in and to stay true to it and not ever start to take it for granted.
What do you consider to be your greatest weakness?
I think that a couple of things. One is that it's very easy for me the reason I remind myself, seek to bless, not to impress, is because it's easy for me to want to, I want to look good. I want to, in a sense, who doesn't, right?
Yes.
We all do.
Yeah.
I do. But it's very easy to kind of have my motive be, yes, I want to bless, but I really, really hope that I was good. And they come across, they view me as good. And again, I'm not against, I want to succeed with people, but I just don't want my mindset to be more about me. I want it to be more about them. And it's very easy to, if I give a speech, want to do good in a speech, right? But what's my motive? Is it to bless or impress? It's easy for me to fall into, I hope I impress them.
I have
And
to
I have
tell
to
you,
check.
that is really beautifully said. Beautifully said. So let me ask you a couple of other difficult questions.
Okay.
You're the son of a very famous man.
Yes.
How did you deal with that? And I'm asking that from many different ways. What was it like growing up? How did you create your own true north?
Yeah.
Was your father the type of person who said, it's my way or the highway? Clearly he wasn't, because we know that from the books, but I'm just asking.
Yeah.
You know, he was clearly an inspiration to you, but how did you deal with being known as yourself?
Yeah. I think it's a great question, particularly for me, because I carry my father's name, just, different middle initials,
Yes.
but I carry his name. So let me share a couple of thoughts on this that will kind of show you my journey.
Yes, please.
The first is that growing up with my dad, that's what I knew. It's what I experienced. He was, what the thing about my dad is he lived what he taught. And you'd hope that, right? I can just tell you, as a child would know. And my dad was the real deal. He was a trust and inspire parent, and he believed in us, and he helped us come to believe in ourselves, and he modeled it. He went first. He was the model of what we were trying to do, and that, that's remarkable to have that kind of love and affirmation coming at you, but also a model. Not everyone has that. I know that. I was fortunate. I was blessed, lucky, privileged to have that kind of model. And I like to say it this way, that as good as my father was in public, as a speaker, as an author, and he was very good, he was even better in private. Wow. As a husband to my mother, as a father to us kids.
How many children? How many children?
There's 9 of us.
Holy.
Yeah, I'm one of 9. I'm the third of 9.
Wow. So
we had a big family, and yet each of us felt like we were our dad's favorite. because
that's a trick in itself.
It's a trick. Well, it was genuine. He really just connected. He worked at it. It didn't, he would take us on trips. We got to pick our trips that he'd go out and speak, and he'd be gone. So what did we do? He'd take the kids.
Wow.
And we got to pick the trip. He'd lay out the schedule and say, okay, I'm going to Orlando. I'm going here, this, that. I get Orlando. I want Disney World. This is growing up and things like that. And but he really worked at the relationships. It mattered to him. And you felt the love. So I was fortunate, blessed. And by the way, everything I'm saying about my dad and my mom was his equal in every way. And an extraordinary person, leader, force in the community. So I had great modeling right in front of me, and that gave me a sense of stewardship, of responsibility. Now, having said that, I will say this, CB, that I struggled with being my father's son. And when I first joined the company, and I had other opportunities I had an opportunity on Wall Street and one with this big national real estate development company, exciting, more glamorous, but I felt like my dad's stuff was going to really change the world. This was before the 7 Habits was published.
Wow.
So I joined and said, this is going to be part of something big. That took a lot of courage, because it was actually easier to join one of these other places, because then I would be seen for kind of who I was, not just being my dad's son. But here's how I dealt with it at first. I said, I had a hard time thinking I could follow in his footsteps, because he wrote the 7 Habits. And how are you going to follow the 7 Habits? That's sold 40 million copies and influenced people. And he was this great teacher and speaker. And so that was intimidating to think I would go down that path. So I kind of carved out initially what I felt was my own identity and my own strengths. I came out of Harvard Business School. I learned business, and I said, I'm going to try to focus on the business side of the thought leadership. My dad's the thought leader. I'll be the business operator. I'll try to turn this into a business that can scale, can grow, can reach people around the world. And it was almost too intimidating to think I would write and speak like my dad, because I thought I'd just be a poor man's version at best. And so I said, I'll go this other route, both because I was fearful, candidly, of not measuring up to my dad's reputation and just being a poor man's version at best. I was fearful, but also, in fairness to myself, standing up for myself, I did feel like I had strengths that were needed in the company to grow the business, to find a business model that worked, to scale it. And I felt like I did have strengths there too, and that there was a greater need for that. So I went that path. And then I kind of had two career paths. That was the first half. And we built the business. We became the largest leadership development company in the world, doing things all around the world. And then when we did a merger with Franklin Quest to form FranklinCovey, I saw what happened there, that we were struggling. We'd been arch competitors. And at first we struggled. We didn't trust each other at first because we'd been competitive in the marketplace. And then we began to say, we got to build trust internally in order to have the impact we want in the market. And we did that. And we built a high trust team and culture in this combined company. And I came out of that experience saying, wow, I just think I found what I want to say to the world. I just think I found my voice. It's around trust. It changes everything. We're underestimating it by a factor of 10, maybe 100. And it's learnable. It's movable. You can build trust on purpose. And I came out of that saying, I think there's a need for this in the world. Why trust matters and how to build it. Because most of the stuff on trust was either too academic or too simplistic. I felt like I could make a contribution. And it's interesting, CB, once I found my voice, I lost my fear. I no longer was afraid to be Stephen R. Covey's son. And I saw it rather as, wow, what an opportunity to be Stephen R. Covey's son. To stand on the shoulder of a giant. And I, don't care what other people think. Seek to bless, not to impress. I have something to say. I think I have a contribution to make. So have my motive be to bless, not to see how I stack up compared to my dad. Don't worry about any comparison. Just, you feel called around trust, seek to bless now around it. And I lost my fear and I moved down that path. And I've been doing that as the second act of my career is me as a thought leader, riding on trust and inspiration and with a lot of courage and not worrying about any comparison.
Have you read Jaworski's book called Synchronicity?
I have not.
I'm going to send it to you. No, I'm not going to tell you about it. I'm going to send it to you. We've talked a lot about a lot of different things that are all so valuable. Thank you so much. I want to ask you now a pointed question as we wrap up.
Yeah.
What was your biggest failure and how did you turn it into success?
Yes. Okay. Can I pick two?
Absolutely, you can. We're lucky that you could pick two.
Yeah, because it will kind of describe my two acts, my two careers, my the business side and the thought leader side.
Okay.
So on the business side, I'll never forget one time I was, I learned the business from the ground up. I sold, I delivered, I kind of built a team, then built a team of teams, and then, led different groups. And at some point, though, I became the CEO. And again, it's my father's company, so I have that advantage. I know that, but along the way, I kind of had formed judgments and opinions of different groups. And there was one group in our company that I felt like they were not really contributing a lot to the bottom line, to the growth of the business, and that we were putting a lot of resources in them, and that what they were, getting back to us was not very strong. And I kind of labeled them, judged them, and even sometimes spoke about them that in unfavorable terms. And here's what happened to me is, I became the president, and I still kind of treated him this way, almost like the stepchild of the organization that wasn't pulling their weight.
Yes.
And that was the perception that everyone had. I had it, and I perpetuated it, and I even maybe helped create it. Then we brought in an outside firm because we didn't have good systems and good data to really tell us how our business was doing and where we were profitable and not. And so we brought in this outside consulting firm that did activity-based costing to kind of really help us understand where we were making money, where we were not. And we did this, and we applied it across the entire business. And then, to my shock, what came back to me was that this division that I'd been disparaging, when we actually looked at all the data and all the spinoff and all the different elements that came from this, that they were the second most valuable and profitable part of our company. After I had been kind of bad-mouthing them, not mean-spirited, but kind of downplaying them. And I mean, it wasn't a mean-spirited thing, but just kind of acting like you're just a hobby. And we have these other things that are real businesses. And they come back, and they're right near the top. And I was completely wrong. And the data, I had data now. And the data, and so I had to kind of confront this and take it head on, because I felt like I was flat out wrong, and I need to own it. And I'll lose people's trust if I kind of skirt it, ignore it, push it to the side, and everyone knows what I've been saying. And now we got this new data, and everyone's excited to see the data, and so I felt like I had to confront the reality that I was wrong. I had to own it and hold myself accountable and say the words, I was wrong. And so I did that. And it took a lot of courage. It'd be easier to kind of skirt it and downplay it and just move on. But I thought I wouldn't have the trust of that division, certainly, because they knew what I had done, but maybe even of others too, that kind of felt that I had done this. So I exercised my courage muscles, and I said, I've got to own this. And I went to the leader of the group, and I said, I was wrong. And I apologize. Wow. Because I was wrong, and I need to make up for it. And so in the same way that I'd been kind of creating this perception and perpetuating that perception that you're more of a hobby, less of a business, I need to become your greatest advocate and champion. I need to make restitution. I need to make whole, because I was wrong, and I need to acknowledge that to everybody. And I do it to you, and I'm going to do it to your team. And then I met with their team, and I acknowledged this, that I was wrong. And I've learned I was wrong. And now I'm going to change and point out and become your greatest advocate and champion. And I did that with the team. I did it first with the leader, who was very grateful for that. Second, did it with that team, that division. And third, I did it for the whole company. Wow. And I got up and said, I was wrong. The data shows this. I had a bias, a stereotype. I perpetuated it. I saw things through that lens. I filtered what fit it, filtered out what didn't, magnified what did, and it was wrong. And I acknowledge this, and I apologize for that.
What did you learn from that?
What I learned was that did not weaken me. It strengthened me. Sometimes we're afraid to be wrong because we think that I look bad. I'm weak. I was wrong as a leader. Maybe I'm going to be wrong again. Yeah, we're wrong a lot. The question is, what do we do when we learn that we're wrong? And how do we learn from it? How do we get better? How do we grow? We fail, but we get up and we grow and we learn. So we're always learning. And this was a learning experience for me. I failed. I misjudged this group. But the big test was, what do I do about it?
What are you going to do about it?
And because I responded strong and owned it, not skirted it, took it head on and took responsibility for it, I came out of that actually with more respect, more trust, and more strength as perceived by people, even though I'd made a huge mistake. And I realized that doing the right thing requires courage, but it also, that is how you gain the respect and the trust of the people that you're with. And it requires both humility and courage.
Did you trust yourself more after you responded like that?
I absolutely did. I trusted myself more because I knew this, that I'll course correct. If I'm wrong and I figure it out, I'll get it right. I just did here on the biggest thing, public thing, very, very public. And I got it right, and I earned respect. And I said, so I can always course correct. That's why, we always like to say that vision is the breakfast of, feedback is the breakfast of champions. That's the expression. Feedback is the breakfast of champions. I don't think feedback is the breakfast. I think vision is the breakfast of champions, and feedback is the lunch, and course correction is the dinner. In other words, you have your principles, you stand for something, but then you might learn, you get feedback that not working. And, you were wrong. Now, what do you do next? You course correct. You don't just ignore it, bury your head in the sand, act like it didn't happen. And you don't overreact, but you course correct. Like an airplane flying from New York to Los Angeles, they're slightly off course, just slightly, 90% of the time. They have these constant little course corrections, and they land right there, and so you're just always course correcting. And so I learned we just course correct. And that way we learn from our mistakes, and their failure is learning. Failure is growth. It's a mindset. Now, obviously you try to avoid the colossal failures that could sink the company, but there's not that many colossal ones. They're mostly smaller ones.
Yeah.
We learn from them. We grow from them. We get better because of them. We get stronger. We build more self-trust because we know we'll do the right thing. We know we'll course correct. And when you have a track record of doing that, it gives you more confidence. You'll continue to do that as we go forward. So that's the first. I'll go really fast in a second.
No, don't go fast.
Okay. I just want to make sure that I'm not taking too much time. So that was the first, the business one. On the thought leader one, kind of when I found my voice around trust and inspiration and wanting to write about this, talk about this, had to learn how to do this. And, my dad was a great speaker and teacher, but I had not done that. And so now I'm writing about trust because I did earn some insights from my merger experience and all the work I'd been doing with clients. And so I had insight and I was writing about it, but when you start to write about it, you start to speak about it. You're doing this and others, and you start to speak about it. But I didn't know really how to best present and speak. And I was kind of learning how to do that. And I remember I went out, one of my very first presentations, I had a couple of colleagues that went out with me to coach me. And so I gave a presentation about an hour long and everything. And then I met with them afterwards, and we spent like 3 hours critiquing what I did, what worked, what didn't work, and all these things. And they gave me all this advice, and they were really good and expert and everything. But I came out of that 3-hour critique session, I came out of it with 43 things I needed to do different and better. And my next speech was just a day later. 2 days later. And I got 43 things I got to do different in this next speech. And so I went into that next speech thinking about all these things. I got to do this. I got to make sure I do that. And I went into that speech with 43 things on my mind. And I was so confused, so all over the place. I kind of bombed.
What?
It was much worse than my first one because I was trying to do 43 new things.
Mhm.
And it was just too many. And I came out of that and I said, now that one, I know I blew, but I didn't, it was easy to kind of blame, use you guys' fault for telling me all these things. But no, I realized it was my fault for how I interpreted this, but I had too many voices, too many things going on in my head of all these things I had to do. And what I learned from that is that there's not 43 things I need to do. It became clear that I needed to do, just these 4 things. And I became clear what my
Wait. How did you get down from 43 to 4?
Because I said the 43 things are what other people are telling me, but what do I feel? What do I need? Who am I? And what do I feel? And it was very clear. And it included this, like the first one is to bring energy, excitement, and passion to my topic. Because if I don't, who is going to? I need to be the one that does that. Second, to connect with people. Face to face, eye to eye. This is about connecting and not just giving a speech. I got to connect with people. Third, to tell great stories. Because people remember stories, they relate to stories. And I'd become too conceptual with content and I need to tell great stories. And then fourth was to be present in the moment. And not worried about this before, this after, but just to be with people present in the moment. And that was basically my way of taking all this advice they'd given. And it was good advice. And I said, but I can't remember 43 things. And I can't try to implement 43 things when I'm speaking. But these 4 things, to bring energy, excitement, and passion, to connect with people, to tell great stories, and to be present, I can do those 4 things every time I speak. Then I added to it later, and to remember my motive, seek to bless, not to impress. So I learned, and then now I give a lot of speeches and presentations, and I hopefully I'm effective at it, but I kind of I learned from a failure of just bombing, trying to just be all things to all people, do everything, and I had to become clear of what do I feel is most important to me being me. Like, you said when you talked to Julie, just be myself. And so I had to learn how to be myself also as a speaker, and not to be all these other great speakers out there, but to be who I was, which was authentic and real and vulnerable and genuine, but passionate about principles and about trust and inspiration. So that's my learning, my failure, and learning on the second act side of me being a thought leader.
Thank you so much for sharing. You have no idea how much that has helped me. As I am embarking on a speaking career when I release my book.
Absolutely.
I'm like, I naturally speak quite well. And for some reason in my head, I keep saying, okay. And I used to be a member of the National Speakers Association. I have no problem. But for some reason now, I say to myself, now you've got to really do it. You're going to have to back it up with a book. And what are the things you're going to have to learn about speaking again? And all of this stuff is going through my head. So I'm so glad to hear.
Well, absolutely. If you thought enough about it, you'll come up with 43 things. And instead, it's already in you. CV, this is who you are. You know this. You love, everything that you're about in this book that you're putting out, and the courage to lead and to leap.
Steve, I'm going to let you be my coach on this.
Wonderful. Well, it's already in you. It's already in you. And like you say, you are natural at this because it's who you are. It's how you lead. It's how you engage with people. You feel it.
Well, this has just been miraculous. That's all I could think of. Thank you so much. Audience, wow. I'm either getting better or my guests are getting better. That's what it is.
I
No.
think you're great. So I think it's the former. You are getting, you're terrific. It's what I like most is I feel like I've just had a conversation.
That's our goal, is to always let our guests feel like we're sitting in the living room having a glass of wine and chatting it up, because I feel that I am highly dyslexic. And so for me, the best way to learn is visual and hearing and listening. Hearing and listening, two different things, right? And so I so appreciate you and the work that you're doing and sharing with us how you got there and your blips and your successes. You were just so honest and raw. It's wonderful. It's a good thing. Thank you.
Thank you, CB. Thanks for having me, and to our viewers and listeners for listening to me. And I hope that, I genuinely hope that I've said something here that can be of value, that can bless.
Absolutely. And I want to, I know we're not supposed to do this on LinkedIn, but I'm going to do it anyway.
I appreciate it.
Get Stephen's book. And you know what? Maybe the first book, should we say it's a sequel?
I would see it not as the sequel. They're kind of, the Speed of Trust is more of how you build trust in a relationship, team, and culture. It's more of a building trust. This one is more of a leadership book of saying the world has changed all around us. We need our leadership style to change with it. And the old style, command and control, doesn't work in a new world of work. We need to move from command and control to trust and inspire. Because people don't want to be managed. People want to be led. They want to be trusted. They want to be inspired. It brings out the best in people. And maybe command and control worked for some in the past, but it's not going to work today in this new world with, people having choices and options, and these younger generations, Gen Z and the Alpha generation and millennials, they want to be led. They want to be trusted. They want to be inspired. So it's more of a leadership book. So you could read them in parallel. We could read one before the other, either way, but this is the one that's out. I'd say you don't need to read Speed of Trust first. You grab Trust and Inspire. I hope that you'll find it of value to you.
Well, so this is going to start another conversation, but I won't. So I'll just ask you to come back again. I think this is something that our leaders need so much for two reasons. One, because of where we are as a society right now.
Yes.
I mean, we're in the midst of 5 different pandemics at once, right? The other reason is that I sincerely think that we've lost both trust and the ability to inspire.
Yes.
And our leaders, I feel, are losing this. I have been doing some studying on the suicide rate of the C-suite. And I think that your book will help them get past that moment of despair.
Yes, I hope so. We need that hope. We need that inspiration.
We need it. Yeah.
And
nothing is so serious in life.
Yes.
That you can't trust and inspire yourself and others.
That's right. We need this. All of us, our communities do, our neighborhoods do, our families do, our homes do, our businesses do, and each of us does. And each of us, I believe, can become a trust, inspire person and leader in all of life.
And let this be your guide.
Thanks, CB. So great to be with you.
Thank you so much. Podcast. Thank you. Audience, see you next week.